Welcome to another episode of Cooking with Kylene. It's mid-December, so it's time to make a cake. I was lucky enough to scrounge up the ingredients to make a German chocolate cake this time. It's been 9 years since I first made this recipe, so I'm sorry to report that I don't remember where I got it from. Before I start this video, I wanted to mention something I think is really neat. This video is brought to you by water. We are completely off-grid, so in our attempts to reduce our fuel usage, our boss invested in a Pelton water wheel. It's gravity-fed and uses the water that feeds down from the mountain, and we get to utilize the water just before it goes into the ocean. So all the electricity I used in making this cake and video was thanks to water. Now onto the video. The ingredients and instructions for this cake are in the description down below, and here are the tools that you will need for this cake. While typing this, I realized I forgot our first necessary items, which is 3 9-inch cake rounds and a strainer for sifting. Spray each pan with an even coating of oil and sift a light dusting of flour onto each pan. Tap out any excess flour and set those aside. Next, you'll grab a medium mixing bowl and measure out 2.5 cups of flour, a teaspoon of baking soda, and a half teaspoon of salt. I tend to tilt the strainer and tap it from the top to sift instead of side to side. It works better to let gravity work with me instead of against me on this one. I'm all for tips and tricks, so if you have any, please let me know in the comments down below. Next, in a small saucepan on medium-low, heat the German chocolate squares and water. As you can see, that's not chocolate squares in the pan. That's because I didn't have any. I made this one with cocoa powder. If you'd like to see how I did it, check the timestamps down below to get to it. Pour that into a heat-safe vessel and set that aside to cool. In a large bowl, add 2 cups of sugar and 1 cup of butter. There's a pilot light in my oven, so I put these butter sticks in there to soften. Soft butter is the goal, not melted. So thoroughly mix these two together. I use a fork to start, and then I transfer to the mixer. This is a patience step. Wait until that butter and sugar get fluffy, but you don't have to wait buttercream frosting long. I wait until the color changes to a paler yellow and I don't hear as much grit sound from the granulated sugar. Once the butter is right, set that aside and then separate out 4 eggs. The 2 main methods of separating eggs that I'm aware of, unless you have one of those special tools, is transferring the yolk from shell to shell and allowing the shell edge to break the egg white membrane, or using your fingers to cradle the yolk while allowing the egg white to run through them. I recommend the latter because you risk getting shell pieces into your mix and maybe even a higher risk of popping a yolk. Add 1 egg yolk at a time, mixing well between each one. I just gave our chickens some washed and crushed egg and seashells because I noticed that some of these eggshells were a bit thin, and just a reminder to always wash your hands between any egg handling. After the egg yolks, add part of the chocolate mixture and mix that in. Be sure to incorporate all the ingredients well and use a spatula to mix any lingering unmixed ingredients hiding on the bottom or the sides of the bowl. Stir in the rest of the chocolate and then add in the vanilla. A small intermission reminder to preheat your oven. Getting back to our batter, we're going to alternate between the flour mixture and the buttermilk. I also did not have buttermilk, so if you would like to see how I did that, that is also near the end of this video. Check the timestamps down below. Mix well before adding new, and definitely use a bigger bowl than I did. Once the buttermilk and flour are all incorporated, clean the mixer attachments, and then beat the 4 egg whites that remain in a separate bowl until they form firm white peaks. Once the egg whites are ready, add a third of the mixture in and fold that into the batter, and then add the remaining egg whites, folding those in until there aren't any more white streaks, or you can do it like I did and just dump it in. Evenly portion out the batter between the 3 prepped pans and spread the batter evenly throughout the rounds, while trying not to dirty the sides of the pans. Check the temperature on the oven and bake those rounds at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. Take the pans out of the oven and let them sit for about 10 minutes to cool. Then take the cake rounds out of the pans and finish cooling the rounds on racks. I can tell I got tired making this cake because I usually flip onto a silicone sheet or a cutting board, so I don't have cake stuck to the counter. C'est la vie. Well, on to frosting. Put those egg separating skills back to work and get 3 more yolks separated for the frosting. Put those into a cool saucepan, add the evaporated milk, 1 stick of butter, and a cup of sugar. I also did not have evaporated milk, so if you would like to see how I did that, check the timestamps down below, or just wait till the end of the video because it's coming up shortly. Turn the burner on to medium-low heat, break up the yolks and get everything thoroughly mixed together. Keep the mixture moving and it'll thicken as it cooks, and even more once it cools. Once the mixture is thick, remove it from the heat and mix in the coconut and the crushed pecans. I got these pecans in Texas this last spring and shipped them to myself. Once that's all mixed in, you just wait a few minutes and then the mix cools enough to be the right consistency to spread the frosting out. If the frosting is too hot, it'll just run off the cake, and if it's too cold, it'll be very hard to manipulate and move. I accidentally cooked my frosting a little too long, so it got pretty thick. It was a bit hard to spread, and combined with all of my haphazard lack of cake trimming, and so you got some frosting windows on this one. Overall, this cake was a total success. Wes loved his cake, he didn't have to share with anyone, and he got it taken care of in an impressively short amount of time. Well, another baking success on the books. Maybe I will bake something I can eat next time. I hope everyone has a lovely holiday season and had a safe transfer into 2023. Well, folks, until next time, stay inspired, everybody. Alright, now on to all those ingredients that I didn't have. First is the buttermilk. It's pretty easy. A cup of milk with a teaspoon of lemon juice. Let that set for 5 minutes before mixing it in with anything else. To make the chocolate, I used 14 teaspoons of granulated white sugar, 4 tablespoons of cocoa powder, and almost 2 tablespoons of oil to start. I did end up adding more oil because I didn't have enough once I started mixing, but mainly this is just mixing until you have the right consistency. I used oil. You can definitely use shortening. I think that's actually recommended, and this is for 4 ounces of chocolate substitution. The ending texture should be a soft paste-like consistency. Kind of firm, but not lumpy. I laughed the first time I looked up how to make evaporated milk because you evaporate it. Of course you do. So I have done this several times now, and you have to use a little bit more than double the amount of milk that you would like to end with. So I started with just over 2 cups because I needed about a cup for the recipe. Even though I have done this a couple times already, I kind of forget how long it takes sometimes. So not yet, had to continue, put it back in the pan, keep stirring, and yep, stir, stir, stir. This is about the time when you can start noticing the texture and the color change. And this time, it was a success. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below, and I hope this was helpful for somebody.